Welcome back to another episode of the Strength and Speed Podcast. I'm your host, MudGear-Battle Alliance Pro and Strength and Speed owner, Evan Preparis. I have Rachel Waters joining me, back for another episode. Rachel, say hi.
Hi, Evan. Hi, everybody.
Hey, this episode is brought to you by MudGear. MudGear is, I think if you're in the OCR world, you know who they are, right? Socks, seat covers, t-shirts, shorts, underwear for a while, compression pants, compression shorts. We love MudGear, and they've been around the industry for a long time, and they're a big sport of the industry, so make sure you give back to the brands that support our sport. And if you haven't seen their VJ shoes lineup of socks, you can check those out. And then they've also expanded at OCR World Championships, where they do some screen printing on the socks, where they can get a little more complex designs. So they partnered with Legendborn and had some kind of like Legendborn-esque, country socks and stuff like that. So check them out. There are a lot of awesome stuff over there. All right, back on the podcast, I have Rachel after her 105-mile self-created charity event for Lionhearts Fitness. So, Rachel, give us a 2-minute recap in case people didn't listen to the last episode we had you on about what was the event you were doing and why you were doing it.
Yeah. So thanks for having me back, Evan. Obviously, I have survived. I didn't croak out there. I made it through. But for those of you that did not catch my previous episode that I did right before the event, I had organized a fundraiser event where I went out to a private venue, a private obstacle course venue, and decided that I would attempt 105 miles with 500 obstacles and a burpee penalty. I wanted to do this for a few reasons. One was to motivate and inspire people to take on tough challenges. The next was to, try to push the threshold for the women's distance and endurance obstacle racing. And then, a big part was that I then attached this physical effort to a fundraiser for a nonprofit, a kids group that I mentor with. And I did that in honor of my mom, who instilled a love of children in me. So I sort of had to organize, call it a race for myself, and of course to, fundraise for this. So our last episode was really talking, Evan and I talking about the planning, the preparation, a lot of my why, how I was going to put it together and all that. So, and here I am on the other side.
Yeah. So let's jump into how did it go? Give us a rundown, and then we can start diving into some of the nuances and some of the unforeseen challenges.
I'll kind of give like a couple of minute thing if I can. It's so hard to try to squeeze it, but I'll do what I can on the highlights. First of all, that this was this just incredible thing that I still can't even wrap my brain around that I did. In a lot of ways, I haven't even emotionally unpacked it all yet. I had never done anything quite of this magnitude. I didn't know what to expect. Evan, you and I had shared with you my course format, and I really didn't quite know what I had built until I got out there. And so, I started on Black Friday at 2 p.m. And I was out, a little south of Nashville, Tennessee. And so I started Friday afternoon, and it was dark by 5 o'clock there. So my first couple of hours, that's when it's still fun, but I hit dark pretty soon. And, when I approached it, I had decided to sort of break my event into 3 sections. And to be honest, I didn't know how long it was going to take. And you and I had talked about that, not really knowing. And so started Friday afternoon, I'm feeling okay through the first night. But, honestly, my first low came around mile 15, which, really wasn't that far into this thing. But, after 15 miles, I had started to get a taste of what I had built, as far as really understanding the obstacles and, what this thing was going to entail. And, at 15 miles, I'm already starting to feel, a couple hours in, tired, and like this 90-mile number just like paralyzed me for a minute there. So I would say like at about mile 15, I felt my first small bout of hopelessness, but I just kind of said, it's fine. You're so early into this. You've done 24-hour events. Just keep moving. And so I had thought I would break this thing into overnight, right, to get to the first sunrise. Because endurance racing, I know you've done this, Evan, when you're out there all night, when the sun comes up, you kind of get like new energy. So it was like, okay, Rachel, like try to break this thing up. First, focus on getting through the night and to, the sunrise Saturday morning. And then from there, worry about sunrise to sunset. So Saturday day. And then I was like, assuming I would finish sometime in the night Sunday. So it was kind of like, okay, so you have, first night to sunrise, next day, and then, the last third is, last bit of night to finish. And so I first tried to just break into those chunks. So I got through my low at about mile 15 and kind of kept moving. And, really started to feel okay as the sun came up Saturday morning. I started to get like kind of a fog because, I'm running this 1.25 mile loop on repeat. And, I'm just like in la la land, basically like out there in this, backyard, basically. And, I'm running and I would say around mile 60 was my next low because at mile 60, and I can't quite remember the exact timing, but, I was about probably 24 hours into this thing going into Saturday afternoon. I'm really starting to feel tired. And then the reality of my pace started to set in and I realized I'm probably going to be out here an entire second night. And so that was kind of a low at like mile 60, and how I decided to deal with that kind of, because I'm having to not only work through this thing mentally and grind it away, or physically and grind it away, but mentally too. So my decision was at mile 65, I would do a clothing change and that'll get my spirits up,
So I'm going to interrupt real quick. So you've mentioned several things already. So if anyone checks out my book on endurance, talking about, some of the mental tricks we use for extending endurance. And you've already mentioned two of them. One of them is, I call it chunking, which is exactly what it sounds like. You break the race into manageable chunks. And, if you look at a race if you look at the start at the whole thing, it's overwhelming. So like
it's physically too big. Yeah.
Yeah. It's you can't do it. Even world's toughest. I don't look, same thing. I break it into daylight and then I bring it into nighttime and then daylight the next day. Right. That's how I mentally handle it. And then a lot of times I'll break it into, 25-mile increments or whatever. So one, you mentioned chunking, which I obviously highly encourage that. And two, you just mentioned a second one, which I call micro rewards, right? So any little thing that you can do to lift your spirits, whether it's changing clothes, changing socks, putting on a different hat, eating a, dessert. Instead, like I usually drink a lot of like liquid nutrition. So it's kind of prepackaged fuel. But then like in later parts of the race, I'll switch to like including with my regular nutrition, like chocolate covered Oreos or red vines or something to boost my spirits. Stuff. Yeah. So
real good stuff.
All right, keep going. So 65-ish.
So 65, I because I'm going back to my like pit area every 5 miles. So I go back there and I like go in the tent, pretty much take everything off, baby wipe down, right? Put new clothes on, and I'm like, okay, mile 65, but that still started to get very discouraging because the reality was I still had 50 miles and I'm just like, you've got to be kidding me. And, sort of I'll digress a little bit. And I'm going to try to tell the story linearly, but the experience isn't as linear as you would think, when you're out there. But so I'll kind of pause there. So in some ways I designed an incredible course, Evan, but in other ways, I think I didn't do well in planning because I really didn't take the time to like space things out physically on like the course map, because I'm only one person trying to kind of do this. And so, and what I will say is I think some of my stuff was too heavy. And so it really slowed me down. Like on paper, 100-pound sandbag drag beforehand didn't sound like a lot to me. But when I got out there and felt how heavy that was on how taxing it was on my hamstrings, those repeated carries broke me down. That was kind of an unexpected thing. I wasn't expecting the strength stuff to really wear on me. I was more concerned about the mileage. And so that kind of surprised me out there and it slowed me down. And so, slowing me down, to a pace that I really felt like I couldn't go a lot faster, had me discouraged, now snapping back into the story, like mile 60, 65, because again, this is where I start to realize like, I'm not going to speed up and I'm not finishing at midnight like I thought.
Yeah.
I'm gonna probably be out here. I've never been awake 2 nights in a row. Like, my body was starting to get tired. And then, but I changed clothes. The sun set so early there. So the sun set Friday night, and Evan, it started pouring on
Oh,
me.
jeez.
Pouring. It rained on me the entire second night. I mean, the wind was whipping the sandbags got even heavier. Everything was wet. Like, I mean, I got lucky with the weather for the first day, but the entire second night, and I'm going into no man's land with like, I'd woken up at 5 a.m. Friday because, I'm getting all ready for the event to start Friday afternoon. And, now I'm going into stayed up all night, Friday night out there all day, Saturday. It's Sunday night and I'm out there, and, it got really wet and I just kept moving, but that slowed me down too, because not only was it dark, I'm on all the obstacles in the dark, but it's also starting to rain. And so but I just kind of kept chipping away. And I had this thought in my head throughout it. My friend had said to me beforehand, Rachel, it's already done. You just have to show up and do it. And something about that was so simple. And I kept telling myself that. So I just kept going through the night, the second night. And, I pushed, and then about mile 80, 85, I had sort of my third like low. And that's when my feet were starting to fall apart. They were wet, and I started to get blisters on all of them. I don't know. Have you ever gotten to a point with your feet where they're just all jacked up everywhere? Like, it's just like, I'm sure you've seen it. You've probably done well enough to protect them. And I'd not had this happen before, but I
Not
got to this point.
in military training, yes. By the time I started like endurance racing, like ultra OCR, my feet
Yeah.
essentially, I like the bottoms of my feet are essentially all callous. And even even at World's Toughest, I actually ended up getting a blister, but it was like underneath the blister was like more callous. So like
It
I could
didn't
I could feel the hot spot down there, but like
yeah.
it never altered my gait. And then when it was over, then I was like I took off my shoes and I was like, oh, there was a blister there. I guess that's what that hot spot was. But yeah.
Yeah, and I think it was just, the longest I'd ever been on my feet. And so like, I mean, it was bad. It was like popping everything and trying to patch it back together. And so I hit a low point at like 80, 85, because it was like, how do I still have like 20 miles? Like, it seems like an eternity, but I don't know. I just sort of like shut it off, and I kept moving, and, I'd lost track of loops. And so I kept kind of asking like, what loop am I on? Where I am. Because I had, two watches, one was on me, one was in a pack, like different operating systems, Coros and Garmin. And so, I'm like, not quite, sure what lap we're on, because the Garmin was running fast, like longer. So we were going on the Coros data because it was shorter, if that makes sense. Because between the two, I was like, I'd rather go with the one that's tracking shorter than longer if there's a discrepancy. And so anyway, I was really exciting because I didn't know, but I knew I was coming up on it. And my dear friend Annie had come, and she had crewed and paced me through both nights, which was amazing. She works night shift, so she's used to being awake. So she was actually out there, walking it out with me in the rain the second night. But they let her tell me. So we were on, a lap, and I was like, had just started the lap, and she looked at me and she said, Rachel, it's your last lap. And I was just like, really? Oh my God. Yes. And so, but then what's funny, Evan, is I picked it up and I like sprinted the last like half mile. I'm not even joking. Like, I came in so fast. My whole crew was like, what? So I found out I was sandbagging the whole time, because I finished with the feet and the legs. But, that was a really high level of my lows, I guess. But just to kind of like to tell that. But, some of the really amazing things about it was that I only failed 12 obstacles, 7 spear throws, which I expected. 7 out of my 10 I failed. So 7 spear throws. And then I failed the race ready rig 1 time. And then there were these rings that I failed 4 times in a row. And then that was towards the end. and that was all because was raining. So it was like just so wet that the rings that they had were so slick that I got it. Like I was doing things in 8 sequences. So I got the first 4, but then the rain was just so heavy. So I only failed. Yeah. So it was 7 spears and then, 5 other obstacles, one being the rig and then the same rings 4 times in a row. So I was pretty proud of that because I didn't know what to expect there. I kept with my entire format of obstacles. The only things we pulled based and changed from like the weather was once it started raining, they had like a leap of faith that was just too slick. Like it was raining and dark. So we changed that to, we made the call to change that to like the 14-foot wall instead, just because it was like, I don't need to be, jumping. You've done it. It's like, you leap from one platform to the next on wood. It's like, I don't really need to be doing this in the rain, in the dark, let's swap that one out. And then I have slanted steps, which are like like the leap pad on Ninja Warrior at the beginning where you're like jumping from.
Yeah. Quintuple steps. Yep.
Yeah. So they had some of those. And then again, it was so wet that like there was no traction on them. So we swapped that for the low crawl. So we didn't have to change out anything major as far as I feel like the meat of what the event was. But, those were like more weather safety calls that we made at like 2 a.m. that my crew did. But I was really proud of, I kept my wherewithal. I was still doing math in my head after sleep deprived on Sunday. Nutrition went great. I kept a hydration pack on that. It was a 1.5 liter. And what I did was I sipped out of that the whole time. And in there I had dumped, a bottle of Hoist and filled the rest with water. And then that's what I drank. Food, I found it was so good, Evan. My staples were, for my hot food every 5 miles, I would eat either meatballs with mashed potatoes or protein oatmeal. So that was like my solid food every 5 miles, so 5 miles in, 10 miles, whatever. And then in between that, I did some like vegan protein bars, Chex Mix, dill pickle chips, popcorn, peanut M&Ms, little snacks here and there. Saturday night, my crew ordered pizza and they were kind enough to get me some gluten-free pizza. So it was like the best pizza I'd ever had in my life. It's like raining, like hot food. But yeah, nutrition, I did not even eat a single gel, goo, or gummy bear type thing. Like, all the little quick sugar type. I didn't eat any of that. I just kept it all to real food. I would say the quickest sugar type stuff I was having was treats like peanut M&Ms, Snickers bar, and Honey Stinger waffles. But outside of that, it was mostly what I consider like gas station snacks, But I would say the meatballs and mashed potatoes was great because it was Bob Evans and then frozen meatballs. So it was like so easy to microwave. So anyway, that was kind of my nutrition failures. I would say the strength stuff was a lot harder than I expected, but yeah, does that kind of give you like a high level of how it went? I don't even know.
Yeah,
much happened too. Like so much happened,
that's a pretty good rundown. And I'm not sure. Like I'm shocked it rained. The number of charity events I've done, I've never had it rain. Like my weather's been pretty good, all things considered. Like I've dodged some pretty serious storms and stuff like that. I mean, OCR America too, there's a couple days that were really, really cold. But other than that, there was no precipitation. So precipitation adds another level of complexity.
It did mentally, definitely going into like the second night, and realizing like, how long is this? Am I ever going to finish this? I'm going so slow, in my mind slow. And I kept, I do regret, I kind of was like trying to push myself like go, but I just, with some of these obstacles, I mean, I was doing the math. I mean, that 100-pound drag, I dragged that thing more than a mile and a half. I had this, my farmers carries say it was the same distance. So it's like, I think of like, 3 miles of the 105 was just of like these carries and this, Evan, their Atlas ball is an 80-pound Atlas ball. And I was doing it like miles, like 90 to 100. And it was a pretty far carry. So it kind of blew my mind. Like I'm at mile, like, 97, doing like rope traverses, and it was just kind of like, I almost had to leave my body to like do it. I had to take my doubt, my fear, the like, all of that. And I had to just like stick it in a box and put it on a shelf and forget about it and just keep moving. But, in some ways I still haven't felt like I haven't returned to my body yet, because I was waiting to like fall apart emotionally. I was waiting for this thing to like break me down, and I'm like, maybe find myself in a fetal position sobbing about something, right? Like that's what I was expecting to do to myself, but it didn't happen. So, I almost feel like I missed something. Is that strange? Like, but I was seeking this like total breakdown of myself, but so that what that tells me is that I could have gone faster, maybe.
No,
I didn't break enough.
I think what it tells you is that you're strong enough to do what any sort of reasonable person, or even most unreasonable,
is this reasonable?
Would do, right? Like to get to the level where you're like, you're in the fetal position. For someone like you, obviously it's gonna take a lot, and it's gonna take someone forcing it on you, someone like forcing you to do something essentially against your will, right? Like at the core of this is something you really wanted to do for a good cause. So, it allows you to dig a little bit deeper when things get rough, right? Even if you're not doing it for, like in a race where it's primarily for personal gain or personal satisfaction, No.
Yeah, but I think I kind of walked away from it scratching my head a little bit, like, I was like hoping to just, obliterate myself, but
and this, the sprint, your sprint at the end, that is normal in the sense that like your mind is like the regulator, right? So like when your mind knows that you still have 50 miles left to go, it's not going to let you sprint. Like it won't open up that as an option. It just won't do it. Right. So if you're familiar with running models, right, the central governor model. So essentially your brain is like, no, the limiting factor, at the time it was fairly revolutionary, right? Like the limiting factor for a lot of running is your brain. It's your brain telling your body, no, you can't run faster because you still have another 20 miles to go. You still have another 5 miles to go, even like a short course, right? Like you still have another quarter mile to go in a 1 mile race. Like, no, I'm not letting you run any faster. We can push it at the very end when, essentially there's, you can see the finish line, which is why you get guys all the time sprinting at the end of a race when they weren't moving very fast before that. And also they're using a different energy system, right? So you're switching to a, quick energy system for that sprint or that short run at the end. So.
Yeah, it was, it was just, it was a really unique experience, and again, I still feel like I haven't really unpacked it all because I had to put it all aside, and it's been, 3 weeks now. And, I'm still kind of like looking back on it. And, I think sometimes when you're in that situation, you're not really learning the lessons in it because you sort of flip on, not to be dramatic, but that sort of fight or flight survival mode and that's why we like these things, right? Because we're just like focused on, next obstacle, next mile, next hour, next whatever. And so in a lot of ways, it's not like you have the emotional and mental bandwidth to really even process it all while you're out there. It's like, you kind of go through it and then it comes back. And I mean, I still can't believe I did it because I was so afraid of it from the beginning. I don't
think we mentioned, but how long did it ultimately end up taking?
It took me 42 hours. Whew. So yeah. On like, and I didn't sleep, there was like times where I would sit down here and there, use the restroom. We had like a camping outdoor potty thing because, my crew was all in the house. But for me, I was very adamant about I'm staying outside. Like this is, I'm replicating a race, not, I'm not doing that. So, I mean, but I was on my feet and I've never it blew my mind. And what it also blew my mind that at, hour 42, I'm still doing these obstacles. I mean, my legs, again, I think what I underestimated was, I thought I'd be able to run a little more of it, but after about 50 miles out there with some of this strength stuff and all of the obstacles, like, I couldn't do more than like waddle, and having like 25 hours of it be in the dark, that slows you down a lot too, just with everything you do, like your
Yeah.
running pace, your obstacles. And then one of the nights, so it's like of the 42 hours, about 25 hours of them were in the dark, the second whole night it rained. So it like, it slowed me down, but I've never been awake that long. It was such an incredible experience to kind of go through the full process of it and then be on the other side of it. And now I feel like I blinked my eyes and it's been 3 weeks, you
Hmm.
know.
Yeah, but in the moment, it's like, why is this taking so long? I can't believe
Oh
I'm
my
still
God.
here. And then you look
Yeah,
back on it, and you're just like, oh, that like, I can't even remember. I can't even remember what I did most days between now and then. So
yeah. And I think that was a huge lesson for me that I'm learning. It's funny because now I'm like, have these thoughts of doing more endurance stuff because I'm just like, well, Rachel, you can do anything. Because when I think of what I did, I'm like, 100 miler sounds easy. Like, you mean I don't have to do all of the obstacles? I'm granted my pace would be different, but I think that one of the big things I learned, and it's one of those really simple yet like it's everything kind of things, is I learned that I've so quickly forgot how bad my blisters hurt. And and in those last 20 miles, I slowed down so much because my blisters hurt. And in retrospect, I now have that. It was like this, like that life lesson of it is so temporary, and blisters are blisters. And I would never encourage someone to like run or perform through injury, right? But at the end of the day, my blisters were going to hurt whether I was walking or whether I was running. And so, it kind of taught me that lesson so that next time I find myself uncomfortable, right? And I'm not speaking about injury, that I need to remember how temporary it is. And so that shifts my perspective for all races moving forward, like next time I think, oh man, I didn't get a good night's sleep. I got to run this 6 mile savage race. So it can be like, well, wait a minute, Rachel, like that is so temporary how you feel, and remember what you did out there with on your blisters with all those miles. So I don't know, I think I'm like kind of learning that from it too. um just generally, like it changes your frame of reference when you do these big hard things.
no,
um
absolutely. I think that's so huge. Because you're basing what you think is difficult based off previous life experience, right? So, I saw my first marathon I ever did was still like one of the hardest things I've done, just because I hadn't run that far ever, right? So it was something way outside my comfort zone at the time. But now I've done so many marathons or marathon length or longer things, that it's not really that big of a deal. But you're basing it off previous life experience, which will make certain things hard. And if you put a couple of really hard things in there, I'm not saying everyone has to go run 105 miles of obstacles, right? But if you put a couple of really hard things in there, it stretches out that scale of what you think is hard and what you think is easy. And I think opens up a lot more doors for other opportunities and other challenges that you can push yourself on. So,
yeah, and you and I, we seek that through athletics. I mean, people can do it
correct.
in other ways, right? I mean, some people like to, they work in sales and they go out and put them, selves out on the line with risky sales adventures because that's what, makes them uncomfortable, but makes them successful. So it's like, a lot of us find it in athletics, but it's like, that's, I think the thing that I kind of gained on it, because it's kind of just like turns your whole brain upside down when you do something that kind of big physically, especially as I look into next year as an athlete, because it's kind of like, well, now what do I do?
That was going to be my next question. So, are you planning? Are we going to see it? Are we going to see you do another charity type event, or are we going to see you at a Toughest Mudder or a Spartan Ultra Beast? What's on the?
I don't know. I will say that I won't be. You won't really see me at Spartans next year because I'm not buying a pass. Um, and but I love the ultra distance, so I guess maybe I could find a good venue to do maybe Killington or something. But I don't know, Evan. I kind of want to go into more strength. Like, I think I ran all the obstacles out of my system or something because, I'm thinking about some of the hybrid events, more functional fitness. I was looking at actually a strong woman competition, which is like the complete opposite of 105 miles. But I don't know. But I think that with my newfound like frame of reference, I could also drop in on just some trail races. I was thinking about looking at maybe some 50 milers in some beautiful locations and, dipping my toes out there a little bit in some other stuff. But, I don't know. I still haven't put my full calendar together for next year. I'll be doing the Savage series.
Okay.
So for OCR Savage series, OCR WC mainly, but then, also wanting to dabble in the Hyroxes and Go Ruck and, whatever kind of functional strength stuff I can. Because like I said, I think I ran all the obstacles out of my system, a couple of weeks ago. So, just, I don't know, Evan. I feel like I'm limitless now, having,
I love it. I love it.
conquered something that big. So we'll see. But I'm healing pretty well from it. I'm back to working out. The running is coming back a little slowly, but I think that that's normal.
Yeah, and you're still early. Like tomorrow, we're recording this on the 19th. Tomorrow is a month and a week post World's Toughest, and tomorrow will be the first day I'm running.
Really?
Yeah, I take a month off completely. Just stop. Hard stop.
I've run like 2 miles, like twice. I ran 4 miles today, so I'm getting it.
Yeah, and I'll ease back. It'll be I'll probably run 3 or 5 tomorrow, and that'll be it. And honestly, I wouldn't even start running this early. But I might have something in mid-January that I have to perform at. So
yeah, that's my thoughts too. It's like, but I am enjoying. It's been a really nice couple of weeks after that. It was a great way for me to end my year, go into the holidays, because it's really also made me appreciate these past couple of weekends of just kind of laying low at home and, we're kind of recovering and all of that and starting to think about next year. But, I think I still have some bags to unpack emotionally from my event, my 105. Yeah. But, it was such an incredible experience. I would encourage anybody, you don't have to do something that big. But,
right, exactly. You have to do something at like beyond the edge of your comfort zone, right? Like,
yeah, and especially if you can find a way to use it as either a fundraiser or a way to spread a message or help people or, but it's, you can do it. It's if you make up your mind to do it, it's already done. And then you just do the work. But, I hope that maybe somebody looks at what I did and considers their limits a little bit and maybe pushing them, whatever that means to them.
Yeah. Great message. I love it. If anyone's listening to this and wants to know more about ultra distance obstacle course racing or is interested in getting involved in that sport, pick up Mud Run Guide's Ultra OCR Bible, available on my website and off Amazon in digital and hard copy. You want to know about more?
And I'll say that is a great book. Actually, that is, I read that book, I think 2 years ago, a couple of years ago, before I was, I was really trying to get into ultra running. So I learned a lot. Evan referenced a few of the, self-rewarding type of tactics, but there's a lot of really good info in that book about nutrition and training and mindset and kind of front to back, like, everything you wish you knew before you did your first ultra.
I mean, I wrote it off of experience primarily, right? I mean, just
because you're like, somebody needs to put all of this information together, because it's like nowhere, because it's,
Yeah, so it benefits everyone, but I always laugh that the guys who are like right ahead of me or right behind me would really benefit, because then if they use some of my tactics, they'd be able to get me pretty good. But they don't want to read it, right? Because they're like, oh, I beat that guy by 2 placements, or like, oh, I'm almost as good as that guy, so I don't need to read his book. It's like, if you read my book, you'd probably be way better than me, but you don't. So, oh well, And then if anyone wants,
it helped me, so.
Yeah, if anyone just wants general endurance information, again, pick up On Endurance. That's my newest book. Again, great for anyone who's involved in any endurance sport, not just ultra OCR. And if you're inspired by Rachel and want to pick up the mantle of doing ultra OCR for charity by doing self-created events, you can pick up my book, Ultra OCR Man, also available on an audiobook on Audible. It tells some of the stories of some of the ultra charity events I've self-created and done. So we're going to get going. I think we might have Rachel. You might be on in the next episode again. We will see.
Okay. Well, before we'll see. Yeah, I'm been enjoying it because then I could talk about obstacle racing for hours. Y'all have to in the old movies when they throw lettuce at people on stage. It's pull her off. But I did want to say I just wanted to give a shout out. Thank you again to the brands that sponsored my fundraising event. So Hoist, GoRuck, MudGear, and Race Ready Obstacles are all 4 great OCR brands that contributed, to my fundraiser raffle and to some of the gear that I needed to put this event together. So wanted to thank them again for their support in this and believing in me and the mission I was doing. So just want to give them a shout out.
Yeah, great stuff. So I teased it a little bit, I think, in the last 2 episodes, so I'm not going to talk about why we might have Rachel back on the podcast, but we'll keep that.
Yeah, I have top secret clearance and I can't say anything, so it's classified information right now. So
well, I don't want to start saying stuff and then something happens and we end up not, it doesn't pan out quietly. So but yeah, check back. We'll have some great content.
We're being elusive, but we may be telling you something exciting soon.
We'll have some great content, both on a podcast form and then video form, again, if everything pans out in January, especially when, there's not much going on in January. So it's just a really, really fun and great opportunity. So we'll hopefully all that pans out. And we'll have Rachel back on probably multiple times, one pre and one post
and I've
episode.
actually, and maybe I shouldn't say this on live recording, but I've actually put some thought into, working with Evan on the podcast because I love it so much. So if you guys, you might want, if you don't like how my voice sounds, maybe give Evan that feedback now. If you think I'm annoying, but again, I won't say too much about that, but, that is, something Evan and I've kind of talked about is, co-hosting. So anyway, I'll stop with all the stuff we're not supposed to leak yet. So, but thank you for having me, Evan. I enjoyed the recap of the race. And, if anybody wants to hit me up, has any other questions about it, there's so much more detail. Love to share my story. Instagram's the best way to find me. Rachel, RACHEL_fit_girl. And that's it.
Great. Well, it's good catching up with you. And this will probably come out after Christmas. So have a Merry Christmas. And if our listeners, hope you had a Merry Christmas, and we will see you in the new year. This will be the final episode for 2022.
Happy New Year, everybody.
All right. We'll catch you later.